For Global Business Update, Michael Wilson joins us now from London. Good morning, Michael.
Hello there. Happy Monday, beginning of the week. As far as Asia's concerned, I'm going to hit that before we do all the stuff in the UK. Hong Kong and South Korea and China are closed because of a public holiday. Elsewhere, shares have not been too badly, particularly in Japan. The Nikkei up about 1%. However, even though the markets, or at least the equity markets, are closed as far as China's concerned, the national currency, the renminbi, is heading for its lowest level against the dollar for quite some time, despite the fact that the central bank there has been actually trying to defend the currency. I think this is a pivotal moment, actually, because what it does is, of course, it makes imports more expensive, but it does make their exports cheaper, which might do their economy a load of good. At the same time, Joe Biden in the United States, as we understand it, is ready to hit China with broader curbs on US chips and also US tool exports as well. The Commerce Department is sort of confirming this at the moment. The company's concerned, if you're interested, KLA, LAM Research, and Applied Materials. This is something which, again, is part of the trade war which is continuing between the two countries. We'll see how it actually unfolds over the coming weeks. Stock futures basically in the United States, flat. Again, not too bad a week for given the volatility of what's happening in the markets. The Dow relatively unchanged. A winning streak for US stocks last week, but you know, within these volatile times, who can actually say what's going to go on? And this is very much ahead of what the Fed's going to say about its interest rates, and a couple of governors coming forward fairly hawkish about that. Maybe we're going to see a 0.75% rise in the United States. However, I personally feel it would be a big mistake, even though technically the United States is in recession, to write it off as an economy. It has this ability. Remember, it is self-sufficient in fuel, it's self-sufficient in energy, and it's got a highly mobile labour force. And actually, that counts for a lot. Have a look at, I'd be interested to see, for example, an index of U-Haul. You know, those little vans that take all your possessions from one state to another? We did the same thing last week with pallets, didn't we? Through Brambles, the Australian company. I'd be terribly interested to see how their uptake or their revenues are actually succeeding or not, maybe, in terms of what's perceived from the outside as a US slowdown, but maybe there's something else. Did you listen to the French Prime Minister, the French President Macron, on what's happening in the UK and the death of Queen Elizabeth II? I thought it was quite touching, actually, given that this is a neighbour of ours whom we often have ups and downs with. But I thought that his address was quite touching. However, there have been big demonstrations in the Rhone Valley this weekend, and it's clear that the left in France, the left parties will challenge Macron as he comes up for election fairly soon. The EU, staying with that, has offered to see some kind of agreement maybe with the UK about the borders to Northern Ireland. Now, again, this is something which the whole world has pitched in. I have long maintained this is a domestic matter. I think this is something to do with England and rather the UK and France. But everybody who feels as though they've got sort of Irish descent, most notably the United States, has jumped in on this. No business doing so. It looks like there could be some kind of help with that. Maybe invisible controls over the border, which would help everybody. In the same way, don't you see the drugs gangsters, don't you, in movies? How much are they going to get paid? They're going to get paid millions of dollars. They pick out various dollar bill stacks randomly, have a look at them, see if they're okay, then that's apparently what's going to happen with lorry checks. Who knows? UK GDP grows very, very slightly, and again we've got unemployment coming up in the country tomorrow. What are we facing here? We've got a nation in mourning. We've got a new king. We've got a new prime minister. What about Charles? What about King Charles III? What is he actually going to do as far as business is concerned? No idea. What is he going to do as far as politics is concerned? No idea. What we term in this country, there's a certain opacity about the way things are going to happen. What we know is that Queen Elizabeth II's funeral, state funeral, will be a week today, and the rest of the country is going through mourning at the moment. The Bank of England has put off its interest rate decision and so on. So there's a whole halt in things that are actually going on. What does he mean for the country? What does King Charles III mean for the country? Everybody laughed at him 20 years ago when the Duchy of Lancaster started its organic farming program, and yet that company now makes £30 million a year, and that gets funneled directly. Those profits get funneled directly to charities. Traditionally, the monarch does not get involved in domestic politics only until the elected parties actually wish him to do so. That's where we stand at the moment. So, in other words, a lot of people mulling over what kind of new Britain this might be. But given that the fact that a lot of economists are now saying it's not so much about algorithms, it's more about the national feeling of things, it may be that we avoid a recession in the coming year. Who knows? And finally, oil down to an incredible, look at this, I've got it, you may have something different from me, I've got it $85 a barrel WTI, really going down. The oil market is actually descending on what's being felt as global demand actually falling. It could be that, and also we've got a US cap plan coming off on prices that are going to be paid. So isn't it amazing? And in 1 week, well, actually 2 weeks, amazing how the international outlook has changed. It's changed absolutely dramatically. And oil, I feel, will be one of the main indicators about that. I think OPEC Plus, forgive me, was completely right to be saying we're not interested in the volatility, we're interested in the fundamentals. Well, the fundamentals are saying to them, actually, do you know what? Global demand is slowing. Are we going to see consumer destruction as far as the oil price is concerned? I leave that with you.
All right, all right, Michael, good to see you again. Very great words there by President of France, Macron, about the Queen. But I'm not surprised. You forget that a certain William the Conqueror, which the French call Guillaume le Conquérant, was King of England, 1066, and the coat of arms of the Queen, there's a French word there, Mon Dieu est droit, God on my side. So the French and the British pretty much have a very long line of relationship. But secondly, I'd like to talk about cost of living crisis in the UK. Yes, under the new King Charles, it's going up by the day. And they're beginning to complain about this credit card debt, which is another bubble building in the economy. And the fact that because of high interest rates, mortgages are problematic now in the UK. What's Liz Truss' plan for this? Because she's not said anything about that, and the problem keeps piling up.
On your language thing, I would remind you, as a student of English language and literature, actually, yes, you're right, in terms of the funny kind of old-fashioned French language that was used at the beginning in 1066. Actually, that was the court language then, and it's changed a number of times depending on where we've got our kings and queens from. The reason that the Queen, if you looked at those old documentaries, was talking rather like that. It's to do with the Germanic influence of the Hanoverian reign on on what was happening to the English language. So the grammar has changed a great deal. Middle English changed it even more. Victorian English changed it even more, and received pronunciation changed it even more. We live in moving times, but we're talking about 1,000 years. Most, I would suspect, nations probably move within that time. You're absolutely right about debit cards, credit cards, and the rest. Living on credit is something, unfortunately, that you, me, maybe not our generation, but our kids' generation certainly feel quite comfortable with. I don't, but I could be wrong. I feel as though, I mean, you know, we can talk forever about how it's good to push debts forward until interest rates actually go down. No, Liz Truss absolutely has not addressed that right now, and I suspect it probably is a major thing for businesses, for consumer groups to address. I think you're absolutely right. I do feel as though there were slightly larger issues that need resolving before we hit that. But you're absolutely, I mean, if you want to come down to street level, this is what people are doing. I have to say, I think it's wrong, as you do.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. I'm not a big fan of credit myself, but with regards to King Charles III, it has been posited that he's going to really dot every I and cross every T and follow his mother's example and stay apolitical. But I think it might be really hard for him to break the habit of a lifetime. That man is very opinionated, as we saw with the Black Spider memos, and he might not be able to resist the urge. And perhaps maybe he shouldn't. Maybe he might want to put his own stamp on the monarchy and do something people-pleasing like his mother did during the 90s, the John Major years, when she gave up her yacht, the Britannia, rather than have them pay £17 million to refit it, when she wanted to pay her share of income taxes. Given the cost of living crisis, King Charles III might do well to start off on that note and do something, you know, crowd-pleasing like that. Make some kind of a nod to just being a part of the people rather than being above them, and sort of some kind of money-saving venture, considering the huge cost of the funeral and the coronation that's coming around the corner. I don't know exactly what he might do, but it might be nice to just throw in something. And you're going to have to spend a fortune, you British taxpayers, your royal mints. You're going to have your new currency, your new post. The reign of King Charles is going to start off very expensively, so he might want to, you know, make some concessions there. Yeah.
Crowd pleasing, you said. I don't think that's something that really, if you don't see through crowd pleasing, then there's something wrong with you. I think that what we've seen in this country, and again, looking from outside, it might be slightly different, but I can tell you, having lived through a weekend of it, what we're seeing is there is an enormous support for the monarchy. And even in Scotland, which is now, as you know, riven with debate about whether it needs to go independent or not, they still support the monarchy. They're still appreciated in their, this is probably the wrong word. The Queen died in Balmoral, which is in Scotland. She went to Edinburgh in her coffin yesterday to Holyrood House, which is the seat of the her home in Edinburgh, next to the seat of government in Scotland, in Edinburgh. Then she's going to come further south. That says a great deal about the union of the United Kingdom. I've voiced my doubts about Scottish independence before on this programme. I will continue to do so. I do think it's a mistake. However, it has to be said, and she liked the bagpipes being played. You know, first thing at 9 o'clock in the morning, the piper used to stand in front of Balmoral when she was there and play, whatever the weather, whatever was going on. And before dinner, again, the bagpipes used to play. Is that crowd pleasing? I don't think it is. I don't think that Charles...
Well, of course it is. I have no idea what your point is, because earlier on we did talk about this, and I made this exact point about Scotland. It's got nothing to do with the union and her popularity and the support, which is not in doubt. But every monarchy must. You just mentioned the Germanic influence. They changed their surname. You do have to please your subjects. It's not the same, you know, up-down relationship that it used to be. That's really solely my point. So I have no idea what all of this is. Dr. Abati?
Anyway, Mr. Wilson, just two quick things. Some analysts are saying that the funeral expenses, on the Queen's exit is likely to tip the UK into a recession. Under Project London Bridge, we're told this is going to run into billions. And then you have many businesses, shutting down. Those who wanted to go on strike also calling off their strike. And then 10 days of national money. Is this something that anyone needs to worry about, considering the fact that the Bank of England, in any case, by September 12, it had postponed its announcement till September 12, is going to announce, increase in rates inevitably, maybe up to 2.5%. Second, Financial Times is reporting this morning that China is emerging as a competitor with the IMF in terms of support that it provides for risk, infected countries, economically that is, with over $33 billion. Well, is China in a position, to even compete with the IMF, considering the difference in the packages? One is more transparent than the other. Chinese loans are usually shrouded in secrecy. Should any developing countries celebrate about these Chinese loans that are often very opaque?
As far as China's concerned versus the IMF, both of them, I think the IMF imposes, I'm guessing here, I think the IMF imposes its very, very strict rules on whether or not it will lend, and secondly, how long the terms of that lending actually is, with a degree of consensus. China does not do that, as far as we can tell, with the Belt and Road Initiative. What it's prepared to do is to invent money, is to print money, and then lend it to countries. And you will know better than I do about the countries in Africa which are indebted to China, and some of whom, I'm sure, are regretting that they went down that road, because they're not finding that Chinese lenders are particularly accommodative to extending the loans. I would, if I were you, draw a big contrast between what's happening in Sri Lanka, for example, and its relationship with the IMF, and what might have happened in Sri Lanka had it had a similar relationship with China. Now, I do know, as you've often said, that China and India are vying to have control over the country. I would be very, very cautious about lending to one particular regime rather than an internationally supported body like the IMF, with whom we have agreed, as we understand it, on their committee, the kind of times, as I said, for lending, how much it should be, and when that ought to be repaid. I do think there's a big, big problem here. And yes, it may be that China is emerging as a world loan leader. My advice, caveat emptor. In other words, if you're buying something, watch it.
Well, I wanted you to comment on whether the funeral expenses would tip the UK into a recession, as some economists are saying. And when I refer to Bank of England, the shift is to September 22.
Yes, let's leave the Bank of England out of it until we see which way they're going to step next week, as it's been postponed. A lot of people are saying, what is the point? Where does the respect come from of postponing an interest rate decision which only leaves a macroeconomic disaster another week away? There's that point of view. Secondly, the markets are telling me this morning that it's not a logged-on certainty that the UK will enter recession in the near future. The growth may well come next year. I point you to, as you know, I don't get involved in this, but I point you towards global political differences that are happening now between Ukraine and Russia. Things are changing day by day. It may not be as we think right now. That's all I'm saying. I can only look at the markets.
Now for business updates across the African continent, Ruto Sadiri joins us. Good morning.
Good morning, Tundu. Good morning, Rufai. Good morning, Doctor. Good morning to all our viewers. President Buhari has inaugurated a new economic council. Let's take a look at some tweets from the president. Said today I inaugurated, that's on Friday, Presidential Committee on the National Economy to bring together all policymakers responsible for the economy against the backdrop of disruptions caused by COVID-19, complications from the Russia-Ukraine conflict, and the decline in our oil production. He sent a long list of tweets saying that we have our own unique issues and that oil theft is economic sabotage. Anyway, Presidential Committee on the Economy, which I will chair, so he's going to chair that, will serve as an economic emergency room that will work towards keeping Nigeria on the path of economic recovery and growth, global competitiveness, inclusive development, and sustainability. There's a picture of the committee. And if you take a look at the photograph of the, that's the question that comes up. So we had an image of the committee, and anyway, so Zainab Ahmed is on there, Godwin Emefiele, the Minister of Trade and Investment, Boss Mustafa. So I don't have everyone off the top of my head, so I thought we had an image. But the question now is, and Doing Salami, of course, is also on there as well. Who, remember, we talked about him chairing the last Presidential Economic Advisory Council. He's also been made Chief Economic Advisor to the President. We have not heard from Doing Salami since that time. And one does wonder, with the number of months left in this administration's timeline, what this emergency room committee will solve. Now, another member of the committee, the Presidential Economic Advisory Committee, made the headlines today about the front page on this day newspaper. That report, Nigeria's $15.7 billion 2022 fuel subsidy projection exceeds all 36 state budgets. Those budgets came to about 9, that's from Bismarck Rwane and his monthly Lagos Business School chat, where he talks about economic issues. So the budgets for all the states came out to about 9.8 billion for 2021. I think as far as the calculations, between 2015 and 2020, we spent about, I think it was $3.8 billion on subsidies. 2021 alone, it was 5.8 billion. First quarter of 2022 is 6.2. We still have the rest of this year to go, and then the projections that Zainab Ahmed put forward, which is almost half of the budget if the subsidies are removed by the middle of next year. So it's pretty excessive. Now, the conversation has now tipped into what we can do. I had a conversation with Kalu Aja, who is a financial educator. He talks a lot about Nigeria issues. He's suggesting keeping the subsidy for the folks at the bottom of the pyramid and removing it for those at the top using BV and NNI. I want to see what you guys think about this.
Well, let's talk about the subsidy. I don't think it should go away. I think it should be redone. Right now, we're paying the subsidy at the port, so it's filled with corruption and inefficiencies. We can design a system where we pay the subsidies at the pump, allow the poorer Nigerians, the need-based part of Nigeria, to buy subsidized fuel at the pump using BVN, N9-enabled phones. So that way you take away the corruption. It's only payable in the Nigerian ports. That will drop the cost, and then the subsidy can go to those that cannot afford.
All right, and then finally, Disney had their D23 Expo over the weekend. They announced a new series in collaboration with Kugali, which is an animated, has Nigerian founders, an animated body. So they're journeying into the futuristic version of Lagos, Nigeria, with the first look of Disney's animation and Kugali's Iwaju. So that's the only image. Well, they released 2 images. You can see some characters there, Tunde, Otin, Tola, and Kole and Body. So basically, it's a futuristic look into what Lagos is going to be like. It's going to be streaming on Disney Plus in 2023. But, so this is, to be commended and all that. But when you think about Hollywood and animated series and the role that they play, they are part and parcel of the ecosystem. So think about any big, Aladdin, Beauty and the Beast, the Lion King, and so on and so forth. We don't have that in Nollywood at this point, right? Think about when you announce... Well, we have some, but it's not on the grand scale of this year on the streaming. When you start a new series, you are creating jobs. You're hiring graphics designers. You're hiring script writers. You're hiring voiceover artists. You're hiring so when we talk about youth jobs, when we talk about engaging them, this type of announcement, while it's great, how much does it cost to fund an animated studio? And could we not? It costs a lot, but then they could have been funding initiatives done to create these types of things, so where we could have been doing them ahead of partnering with Disney+. This is the first time Disney is partnering with an outside studio in its 100-year history. So
okay, so there have been a lot. Sorry, I had to cut.
Because
I do stuff in that ecosystem. I've worked with a lot of animators. They've produced Nigeria's first animated feature film, which has done very well. You know, not to the level of Disney and the likes, but the funding is a problem. The funding is a big deal. You know, you need to inject a lot of capital, you know, to be able to get that appreciable level of quality, and that's why the big partners are coming in. But I think what we should also look at, and the good side to all of this, is the skill transfer, because animators can get better skill and things like that. In fact, one of my very dear friends, Biola, used to run Game Soul. Yeah. Game Soul did a lot of animation series like this, and they did some good work. In fact, they did a lot of work with Microsoft, and they were making games on Windows. You know, he developed a game called Gideon, modeled after Temple Run. You know, MTN got the rights for the game at some point in time. So there's a big ecosystem for animators, but the problem is you need that cut-through cash and that experience and that marketability, that publishing marketability. Yeah. Because the last mile is always publishing, and that's what Disney is bringing. That's why I'm excited about this. But as regards the subsidy thing, yeah, great idea. But how do you benchmark when you don't have data in society?
Right. As in who's buying it and what's the income level?
Who is the income level and things like that. So even if you use the BVN to be able to look at the income level, so what's the threshold? Because I can tell you for free, those are that income level. How do you even segregate them? You know, when we even did the social investment program, we've not been able to, you know, appropriately tackle the problem of income level, income variation and things like that with social investment program. Because, you know, a lot of people adjust targets to a few people. And when you're saying BVN, you're already cutting a lot of people out because most people are not banked in this country.
Right.
So when you look at the fact that a lot of people are not banked, they're not in the system yet, then it's a big problem. So I think the argument for using income levels and BVN falls on its feet. We need to look for something that works, and that thing has to be removing subsidies. Then how do we now go in turn and cushion the effect? That's when data comes in. But it's painful because we've not invested in data. We don't even know the social strata. I keep asking, who are the poor people in Lagos in the first place? Who are the people? How many million Lagosians earn less than 50,000 naira a month? We don't know. There's no data. And we need to invest in data to be able to appropriate all the sectors of society and make plans for the economy.
Don't we have a social register? I thought we did. That's
yeah, but it's not fully. Well, yeah, you're right. So, you know, it's just not fully populated. That's the issue.
I thought we knew, but yeah. Well, with regards to the animation, I think it's great news. Yeah. I'm thrilled to bits. But why are you talking about Disney Plus when Walt Disney was racist? Not him, not his ancestors. He actually was. Yeah. So let's just, you know, bin Disney Plus and bin everything Disney. I mean, let's just do it.
By the way, it's not even, Disney Plus is not even available in Nigeria, so I don't know if they will roll it out in 2023.
They're not making it for you. They're making it for the international audience to give them variation.
Well, it's a big population here.
Yes, if you are going to use BVN to determine who is rich, who is poor, it's a no-brainer. You will drive more people out of the banking system.
Yes, now.
Who wants to be taxed unnecessarily just because you are putting money in the banks? Yeah. People will start putting money under their pillows, you know, as used to be the practice in this country. There's no arguing over the point being made that, look, the subsidy regime is not sustainable. Nobody is arguing that, but how do you plan the exit from the subsidy regime? What are the consequences? What are you going to put in place to deal with the consequences? Because if Nigerians begin to pay for fuel for 25 naira per litre, right, then how do you manage all of that? That's one side of it that we've not been able to address, to find out. And that's why you find some people saying, oh, maybe subsidies should still be retained. But we're running an economy that is based on a traditional structure of inefficiency, incompetence, poor leadership. That is the problem. And that takes me quickly to the idea of the president, you know, just a little over 100 days to go, setting up a presidential committee on the economy.
Emergency room.
Emergency room on the economy. What is that committee going to achieve that the government has not been able to achieve since 2015? What new ideas? If you look at the mandate of this committee on national economy, it's no different from the mandate of the Presidential Advisory Council on the economy. And, you know, people ask the question, what exactly did that advisory council, what exactly did it do? Now the chair of that committee, who is now chief economic advisor, is said to be the secretary of the committee. And if you look at the composition, these same people Other people had been in the economic management team or had been in other committees, the one that was led by the vice president.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, beyond just giving excuses for issues within the economy, I don't see what this National Presidential Emergency Room can achieve between now and, when the government leaves power. As for Disney Plus, well, I think it's a good development. The largest entertainment company in the world, providing jobs for Nigerians and Ugandans. That company that you referred to, Kugali, was set up in 2017 by Nigerians and Ugandans. And now they've been noticed by Disney Plus. They want to do Iwaju, the future, right?
Yep.
Talk about class, innocence. Yes, good entertainment. You've listed all the positives in that regard. But don't forget that also Disney Plus is maybe trying to compete within the African market with Netflix,
right,
which is far ahead in collaborating with South Africans and, East Africans in producing animation. And the animation industry in Africa is growing. And that in itself is a good development to the extent that, it will create jobs, provide opportunities, enrich the entertainment. Whether the animated films are watched by Nigerians or Africans or foreigners, well, yes, the company has its own commercial interest. But I think in terms of recognizing talent on this side of the world, I think it's a good thing.
All right. We'll look forward to it and see how the series
We're looking forward to Nigeria's first Toy Story, right?
Well, anyway, thank you very much, Rotis.
Thank you.
We'll close it there.